Beneath the surface of southern Australia's cool, temperate waters, the light fractures into ribbons, shimmering as it passes through shifting curtains of kelp and seagrass. Surge channels carved by centuries of tides pull water back and forth in a restless rhythm, swaying entire underwater forests as though they are dancing to an inaudible score. This is not a static landscape, but a living tide pulse of color and movement, where every blade of seagrass leans and bends, and every strand of kelp unfurls like a flag caught in the wind. In such a place, survival hinges less on the stillness of camouflage than on the ability to join the choreography. Amid this oscillating stage drifts a creature almost invisible to the untrained eye. The leafy sea dragon, Phycodurus equus, does not vanish by blending into a single backdrop. Instead, it becomes a fragment of the entire habitat. Adorned with leaf-like appendages that trail from its head, spine and tail, it is more than a seahorse writ large. It is a simulation of vegetation perfected by evolution. Each appendage is not functional in propulsion. These are no fins, but instead living extensions of illusion. They catch the light like blades of kelp, they fracture the outline like torn weed, and they make the animal not just hidden within the forest, but indistinguishable from the forest itself. The mechanics of this disguise are as remarkable as the aesthetic. Where most animals rely on color to vanish, the leafy sea dragon must contend with an environment where color is in constant flux. As clouds pass overhead, the water's tone deepens to shadowed blue. When the sun re-emerges, the green canopy of seagrass glows in sudden brilliance. Static coloration alone cannot conceal a body under these shifting lights. Instead, the dragon relies on the physics of motion. Along its torso, nearly invisible fins beat in micro-vibrations, catching and pushing water with such delicacy that the animal appears to hover rather than swim. The rhythm of these movements matches the sway of the surrounding weed, so that even as the surge tugs the vegetation back and forth, the dragon is carried along in perfect synchrony. What predators perceive is not an individual in motion, but another blade of weed drifting with the current. The stakes are high. In these coastal systems, larger predatory fish patrol the surge channels, eyes tuned to detect what stands out against the patterned chaos. They are not searching for stillness, they are searching for anomalies, a shadow that drifts in the wrong direction, an edge that moves against the flow. The leafy sea dragon survives not by disappearing into the background, but by eliminating these errors. Its body is not just cryptic in form, but cryptic in frequency, synchronized to the oscillations of the habitat itself. Paradoxically, the brighter the light, the stronger the illusion. In murky conditions, predators may draw closer, relying on chemical traces or sudden outlines. But when midday sun pours through the water, the scene becomes riotous with shifting light and color, overwhelming the senses with patterns. In this high-contrast world, the leafy sea dragon does not vanish by being unseen, but by becoming unreadable, a piece of visual noise within a larger flood of motion. This strategy is so specialized that it reveals a broader ecological principle. In environments where light and current combine to create constant flux, survival does not favor those who hide by pigment alone. It favors those who match the rhythm of their world. For the leafy sea dragon, motion matching is the rule, a law written in the hydrodynamics of its body and the choreography of its fins. The lesson is clear. In high-contrast water, the body's fidelity to motion matters more than its fidelity to color. The leafy sea dragon's story is not only about disguise, it is about energy, physiology, and the delicate balance of life in nutrient-rich southern waters. Unlike its relatives, the pipefish and true seahorses, the dragon lacks a prehensile tail and cannot anchor itself to vegetation. This means it is perpetually adrift, a passenger in the current rather than a clinger to the substrate. To maintain its illusion, it must constantly adjust, microfins compensating for each push and pull of water. This demands extraordinary muscular control, but remarkably little energy, thanks to the animal's efficient buoyancy system. Gas-filled swim bladders fine-tune its position in the water column, so that instead of battling the surge, it merely leans into it, conserving precious reserves. The evolutionary investment in disguise has left the dragon vulnerable in other ways. It is a slow mover, incapable of rapid escape, and must depend entirely on its camouflage for defense. Even feeding is a calculated extension of concealment. With a long tubular snout, it hunts not by chase but by stealth, creeping close to clouds of mycete shrimp or tiny crustaceans, and then vacuuming them in with a sudden gulp of suction. The prey never sees it coming, for the predator looks like a drifting leaf until the very instant it strikes. This reliance on illusion raises a sobering question. How fragile is such a strategy in a changing world? The kelp forests and seagrass meadows of southern Australia are vulnerable ecosystems threatened by coastal development, warming waters, and storms that uproot their foundations. A leafy sea dragon cannot adapt to a barren seabed, for its entire existence depends on the presence of dancing vegetation. In the absence of kelp, its ornate appendages become liabilities, broadcasting its presence in open water. This makes the species a living barometer of habitat health. Where sea dragons thrive, the ecosystem still pulses with complexity. Where they vanish, an entire forest has fallen silent. Yet within their fragility lies a resilience encoded by millennia of specialization. By choosing camouflage over armor, by trusting illusion over speed, the leafy sea dragon has demonstrated that survival can emerge not from brute force, but from a deep alignment with environment. Its very body is testimony to co-evolution, predators that sharpened their vision for anomalies, prey that erased anomalies until the line between life and habitat dissolved. For scientists, this principle of motion matching extends beyond marine biology. Engineers studying camouflage technologies, from military applications to robotics, examine the leafy sea dragon's strategy as a model of adaptive concealment. The lesson it teaches is not to vanish from view, but to harmonize with the background's frequency, to blend not into a static picture, but into a living film of movement. Seen from the perspective of the surge channel itself, the dragon is not an intruder in the system, but another filament of it, inseparable from the blades of kelp that sway beside it. Its presence reminds us that habitat is not only where an organism lives, sometimes it is what an organism becomes. When the leafy sea dragon drifts in rhythm with the weed, it is not imitating the forest. It is an extension of the forest, a living branch of kelp shaped by evolutionary necessity into flesh and bone. And so the camera lingers, trying to follow the outline of the dragon, losing it again as the current pulls the forest into motion. Viewers may strain to distinguish the animal from the habitat, and in that strain lies the deeper message. This is nature's triumph, the collapse of boundary between organism and environment, between shape and backdrop. The leafy sea dragon has crossed that threshold. It is not a fish hidden within the weed. It is the weed given the power to drift and breathe. At ground level in the Australian woodland, the world is built of fragments. Shafts of sunlight pierce the canopy in broken mosaics, dappling the forest floor with patches of brilliance and shadow. Fallen leaves gather in uneven layers, their colors shifting with the seasons from pale straw to deep decaying brown. Along the edges of creeks, moisture deepens the hues, giving the litter a darker gloss, while in the rafters of barns and the shadowed eaves of sheds, the same patterns of contrast emerge, light and dark in irregular, jagged arrangements. To most eyes, these landscapes are chaotic, without symmetry. But to the carpet python, this is the perfect canvas for invisibility. The body of a carpet python is painted in a lattice of irregular blotches and stripes, jagged bands of gold, olive, cream and black that seem almost abstract up close. Yet laid against the woodland floor, these patterns dissolve into the mosaic of shade, mimicking both the shape of leaves and the fractures of light. Unlike bright warning colors that shout their meaning, the python's skin whispers a quiet message of absence. It does not merely hide against one surface, it vanishes into the texture of the entire environment. The longer the viewer stares, the less they see, until the snake becomes simply another fallen branch, another patch of litter, another shadow beneath the rafters. The genius of this camouflage lies not in stillness alone. Carpet pythons are ambush predators, but they are not statues. Even while waiting, the body shifts with a kind of liquid subtlety, a phenomenon field biologists call microwaving. These minute ripples travel through the muscles, allowing the python to adjust its coils without disturbing the outline of its body. Each motion is distributed so evenly that it becomes invisible, hidden within the natural flickers of shadow as the leaves themselves stir in the wind. By moving incrementally, almost imperceptibly, the python stays positioned at the very edge of striking range without ever breaking its cover. What makes this concealment deadly is the sensory system it conceals. Carpet pythons, like other members of their family, are equipped with heat-sensing pits lining their upper jaws. These organs detect infrared radiation, the warmth of a mammal's body, the blood heat of a roosting bird, with astonishing precision. Where human eyes might see only a blur of shade, the python perceives a layered world of temperatures, every passing rodent a glowing beacon, every bird a flicker of radiance against the cooler backdrop of air. This ability grants them accuracy even at night or under complete cover, transforming darkness into a tapestry of signals. But camouflage and senses alone do not guarantee survival. The python's strategy is shaped by the economics of energy. Hunting is not about constant pursuit, but about patience, about investing time rather than motion. Snakes are cold-blooded, their metabolic rate a fraction of that of mammals. A python can wait motionless for hours, even days, burning almost no reserves, while rodents scurry along habitual runways carved through the undergrowth. To chase prey across open ground would be wasteful. To position oneself along these highways is efficient. Every log that funnels traffic, every barn beam where pigeons return to roost, every culvert where rats slip through is a potential strike zone. The python's camouflage is not random. It is most effective where pathways converge. The strike itself is a revelation for those who expect theatrical lunges. Many imagine a snake striking across great distances, but the truth is more precise, more economical. Carpet pythons rarely extend beyond half their body length, often far less, when launching an attack. This shorter reach is not a limitation, but a strategy. By striking from close range, they conserve energy and maximize accuracy, ensuring that their coils can immediately secure the prey without an extended chase. The surprise lies not in how far the python can strike, but in how close it allows its target to come before revealing itself. Once contact is made, the ambush transitions into constriction, a tactic that is as misunderstood as it is feared. Contrary to popular belief, constrictors do not suffocate their prey by crushing lungs. Instead, they apply pressure that halts blood flow, inducing rapid circulatory failure. Within moments, the prey loses consciousness, the struggle ends, and the python can begin the slow, deliberate act of swallowing whole. Here, the jaw reveals another marvel. Unhinged, not in the dramatic sense of dislocation, but designed with elastic ligaments that allow the bones to spread apart. This flexibility, combined with recurved teeth angled backward like barbs, enables the python to pull prey many times wider than its own head into its body, working methodically until the catch disappears into its coils. The aftermath of a kill underscores the snake's ecological role. By targeting rodents, carpet pythons act as natural regulators, holding populations of potential pests in check. Around human dwellings, their presence can be both unnerving and beneficial. Farmers who tolerate a python in the rafters may lose the occasional chicken, but they also gain a relentless sentinel against rat infestations. In barns and henhouses, the python's camouflage functions just as well against corrugated iron and stacked hay as it does against leaf litter, for what it imitates is not the exact pattern of any one material, but the irregular geometry of broken shade itself. Survival, however, is never without risk. Pythons themselves become prey, particularly as juveniles, vulnerable to birds of prey, feral cats, and larger reptiles. Even adults capable of exceeding 3 meters in length are sometimes killed by humans who mistake camouflage for threat. Yet their strategy persists across generations because it is not absolute invisibility they rely on, but probability. Every day spent hidden along a rodent path increases the odds of success. Every strike zone chosen at an edge or funnel amplifies the chance of encounter. Evolution has refined the balance not toward perfection, but toward efficiency. Beyond the immediate drama of predator and prey, the carpet python embodies a broader principle of ecological design. Camouflage alone is insufficient without context. It is only when paired with the geometry of habitat, with edges, funnels, and pathways of movement, that concealment becomes lethal. This system rule is as true for a python in leaf litter as it is for a lion at a waterhole or a crocodile at a river crossing. The environment dictates not only the form of camouflage but the strategy of its use. And so the camera lingers again, sweeping across the forest floor. Leaves stir in the breeze, shadows flicker across logs, and somewhere in the frame lies a python, coils drawn, head angled forward, invisible until the moment of revelation. It is not simply hidden, it is integrated, a sniper woven from the litter itself, waiting where the world funnels life into its path. When the strike comes, it is sudden, clinical, almost surgical in its precision. Then silence resumes, as if nothing had happened at all. The carpet python does not dominate the woodland with speed or power. It does so by becoming the woodland, by aligning camouflage, patience, and sensory acuity with the rhythms of its environment. In that union, it demonstrates an evolutionary truth, both simple and profound. The best hunters are not those who chase the world, but those who allow the world to come to them. The canopy of a eucalypt forest at dawn is a world balanced on edges. Pale light filters through the blue-green leaves, splitting into shifting beams as the rising sun bends across the branches. Birds stir first, kookaburras calling from high perches, lorikeets squabbling over nectar, and the occasional rustle of a magpie shifting from its roost. Predators awaken quickly in this landscape, for the dim light of early morning offers a tactical advantage. Outlines are sharper against the brightening sky, and even the smallest movement can betray a hidden meal. It is here, in the stillness between night and day, that one of nature's most accomplished deceivers lives, the stick insect, a creature that survives not by outrunning danger, but by becoming almost indistinguishable from the very twigs on which it feeds. At first glance, a stick insect seems absurdly vulnerable. It lacks the armor of a beetle, the sting of a wasp, or the speed of a grasshopper. Its body is elongated, fragile, and slow. Yet this very fragility has been sculpted into perfection by evolution. Every joint, every node, every scar etched into its exoskeleton resembles the irregularities of a twig. Even the segments where the legs meet the thorax align with the breaks one expects to see in a branch. It is not simply shaped like a stick. It embodies the details of wear, fracture, and growth that make real branches convincing. To predators hunting by outline, such as kookaburras or praying mantises, the stick insect does not exist as an animal at all. It is background, debris, part of the structure that frames the canopy. But camouflage in this world is not a passive property. A rigid, unmoving stick might look convincing in perfect stillness, yet the forest is never still. Eucalypt leaves quiver in the faintest breeze, branches sway under the weight of shifting birds, and the entire canopy undulates with the passage of wind. A stick that fails to move with the rhythm of its neighbors risks standing out as much as a brightly colored flower. The stick insect's genius lies in behavior layered upon form. When disturbed by a gust of air, it does not resist but sways gently with the current, legs flexing in a measured arc so that its body mimics the oscillation of surrounding twigs. If touched or threatened, it freezes, limbs outstretched, a perfect sculpture of deadwood suspended among leaves. By alternating between absolute stillness and wind-synced sway, it erases the line between behavior and backdrop. This behavioral camouflage extends to the rhythm of its feeding. Stick insects are primarily nocturnal grazers, venturing out under cover of darkness to chew at leaves when their silhouettes are less likely to betray them. During the day, backlit against the bright Australian sky, even the best disguise risks exposure. A bird's sharp eyes can pick out the slightest contour. But under moonlight or in the dimness of dusk, the risk is minimized. Feeding at night is not merely a habit of convenience, it is a critical survival strategy. Evolution has pressed the insect into synchrony not only with the shapes of its habitat, but with its daily cycles of light and dark. The stakes of this deception are severe. A kookaburra perched above is not fooled by color, but by shape and movement. Its hunting strategy is to scan for the irregular, the misplaced, the out-of-rhythm silhouette against branches. Similarly, predatory mantises, ambush hunters in their own right, are capable of detecting slight shifts of prey against the geometry of twigs. For the stick insect, failure in mimicry means instant death. Yet for millions of years the strategy has prevailed. Their survival is proof that even in ecosystems crowded with sharp-eyed predators, disguise can rival speed or weaponry as a means of persistence. Perhaps the most extraordinary extension of this strategy comes not in the adult's body, but in its offspring. Female stick insects drop eggs that resemble tiny seeds, each with a cap-like structure called a capitulum. This capitulum is rich in lipids, making it attractive to ants that scour the forest floor in search of food. Mistaking the egg for a nutrient-rich seed, ants carry it into their underground nests, where the capitulum is eaten and the egg itself discarded into refuse chambers. These chambers are moist, protected and safe from most predators, an accidental nursery created by another species. When the nymphs hatch, they climb back to the surface, their survival secured by a strategy that extends mimicry beyond body form into reproductive ecology. It is a form of deception so complete that it manipulates the instincts of an entirely different taxon, pressing ants into service as unwitting guardians of the next generation. Camouflage of this kind demonstrates an important principle. It is not color or shape alone that ensures invisibility, but a fusion of form, pose, and timing. Perfect disguise in nature is dynamic. It requires freezing when the world is still, swaying when the wind moves, feeding when light is low, and even producing eggs that trick another species into securing safe passage. In the stick insect, we see that natural selection does not produce camouflage as a static costume. It produces a choreography, a living performance in which every behavior is tuned to match environmental cues. Ecologically, stick insects occupy a critical role as herbivores. By feeding selectively on eucalypt and acacia leaves, they influence the structure of the canopy itself. Their populations are often held in check by predators, but in their abundance, they remind us that camouflage is not invisibility in an absolute sense. It is probability management. Not every bird is fooled. Not every insect escapes. What matters is that enough survive to pass on their genes, that the strategy pays off across generations. Over evolutionary time, even partial effectiveness is enough to sculpt organisms into masters of disguise. For the observer, this mastery can be disorienting. Watching a stick insect in the canopy requires patience and trained perception. One might stare at a branch for minutes before realizing that a section of it has jointed legs, that what looked like a twig has begun to sway independently of the rest. This moment of recognition is humbling, for it reveals how often human eyes fail to detect what is present. We too are predators of outline, reliant on contrast and silhouette, vulnerable to the same tricks that deceive birds and mantises. In a changing climate, where wind patterns shift and light regimes alter with canopy thinning, the stick insect's survival strategy will be tested anew. Habitat loss and altered predator populations could destabilize the delicate balance. Yet their reliance on behavior as much as form may grant them a surprising resilience. While color and shape are fixed at hatching, sway and freeze are flexible, adaptive responses to moment-by-moment conditions. It is this behavioral plasticity that may ensure their persistence even as the eucalypt forests around them change. As the sun fully rises and the canopy brightens, the stick insect vanishes once more into stillness. Only the sharpest eye could pick it from the lattice of branches, and even then, doubt would linger. Is that twig alive? Or is it truly just wood? In that uncertainty lies the success of the insect. It thrives in hesitation, in the pause before recognition, in the failure of perception itself. To see a stick insect is, in some sense, to fail its design. Its existence is meant to remain unobserved. In the end, the stick insect embodies a profound ecological truth. Camouflage is not paint, not costume, not static. It is a living conversation between body and environment, shape and behavior, time and place. The insect survives not because it looks like a stick, but because it acts like one, at precisely the right moments, in precisely the right ways. The forest itself is the stage, and the insect its most convincing prop, a living fragment of eucalypt architecture disguised as stillness and sway. In the quiet margins of Australian suburbs, where leaf litter piles beneath shrubs and the soil lies scattered with pale gravel, life unfolds in a patchwork between the built and the wild. A sudden rustle in the undergrowth might be mistaken for a mouse, perhaps even a snake, But more often, it is the blue-tongued skink, a lizard as common in backyards as in scrublands, and yet one of the most underestimated survival artists of the continent. Its presence is subtle, often overlooked until it is forced to reveal its secret weapon. At rest, the skink is a creature of concealment. Its body, broad and low to the ground, is patterned in jagged bands of tan, grey and dark brown. These stripes resemble the scatter of fallen leaves, the shadows of twigs, or the alternating lines of soil and mulch. Against such a backdrop, the animal seems more like a discarded stick than a reptile. Remaining still among the leaf litter, it relies on this cryptic patterning to keep it hidden from the sharp eyes of kookaburras, magpies, and predatory snakes that patrol the same territory. In these moments of stillness, the skink is not obvious prey, it is simply part of the background. But camouflage, as effective as it may be, is not a perfect shield. Inevitably, a predator's gaze lingers too long, or a stalking cat draws close, narrowing the margin of safety. It is here that the blue-tongued skink reveals the second act of its survival strategy, the shock display that has made it iconic. When threatened, it abruptly throws open its mouth, hissing loudly while flashing a tongue of brilliant ultramarine. This sudden blaze of color, so unexpected in an otherwise muted animal, triggers hesitation. Birds recoil, snakes hesitate, and even domestic cats pause, startled by the intensity of the display. In that fractional window of doubt, the skink finds its chance to escape. The brilliance of the tongue is not accidental. Blue, particularly in the ultraviolet rich light of dawn or dusk, is a wavelength that cuts through the visual noise of soil and shadow. Against the neutral tones of tan earth and faded leaves, it appears almost electric, a burst of pigment that seems unnatural in the environment. This makes it especially effective against birds, whose vision extends into the ultraviolet, rendering the display even more intense than humans perceive. What appears to us as a sudden flash of blue is to avian eyes a searing flare. The performance does not end with color. The skink hisses, inflates its body, and flattens itself sideways to appear broader. Its ribs splay outward, and the entire animal looks suddenly larger, more imposing, less like vulnerable prey, and more like a creature not worth the risk of attacking. This inflation is not simply bluff. By lowering its body and widening its silhouette, the skink reduces the precision with which a bird or snake can strike vital areas. Even if the attacker pushes forward, the odds of a fatal bite or claw diminish. Survival is often about buying time, and the combination of hiss, tongue, and expansion creates that critical pause. The elegance of this two-stage defense, hide first, startle second, reveals a deeper principle of evolution. Camouflage is the default strategy, conserving energy and minimizing encounters. But when concealment fails, the shock display steps in as an insurance policy. This is not aggression, it is theater. The skink does not pursue predators or attempt to fight. Instead, it manipulates perception, first convincing the hunter there is nothing to see, and then convincing it that what it sees is not worth the trouble. Yet this duality also comes with risks. The reliance on bluff means that when predators learn or test persistence, the defense may fail. Young snakes, for example, sometimes ignore the display, pressing attacks regardless of the dazzling blue. Raptors that specialize in reptiles may similarly overcome the moment of hesitation. Still, for the majority of encounters, the opportunistic hunts, the curious cats, the generalist birds, the bluff is enough. Evolution does not require perfection, only probability in the skink's favor. In ecological terms, the blue-tongued skink occupies an important role as both predator and prey. Feeding on beetles, snails, and plant matter, it helps regulate populations that might otherwise overwhelm suburban gardens or natural scrub. Its crushing jaws, powered by muscles far stronger than its benign appearance suggests, are particularly adept at breaking snail shells. In turn, it provides food for snakes, raptors, and introduced predators such as foxes and cats. Its survival tactics thus ripple outward into the ecosystem, determining not only its own fate, but the balance of species around it. Perhaps what makes the blue-tongued skink so fascinating is its success in adapting to human-altered landscapes. Where many reptiles decline in the face of development, skinks thrive in yards, compost heaps, and roadside verges. Their camouflage blends as easily into garden mulch as it does into native litter, and their startle display works just as well against domestic pets as against wild hunters. In this sense, they illustrate how evolutionary strategies forged in bushland can remain effective in suburbs, carrying ancient survival rules into modern environments. The spectacle of the tongue also raises intriguing questions about perception and evolution. Why blue and why so intense? The answer lies partly in contrast. Most Australian soils, especially in dry scrublands, are dominated by reds, browns and ochres, while vegetation tends toward greens and greys. Blue is virtually absent in this palette, making its sudden appearance inherently conspicuous. But studies suggest that the particular shade of the skink's tongue may be tuned not only for visibility, but for psychological effect. To predators, unexpected color often signals danger, poison, venom, or unpalatability. The skink is none of these things, yet by simulating the warning, it harnesses a rule embedded in predator psychology. In the natural world, lying can be as effective as truth. The behavioral context matters just as much as the color itself. A tongue displayed constantly would quickly lose its effect. Predators would habituate, recognizing it as meaningless. The brilliance lies in timing. By keeping the weapon concealed until the last possible moment, the skink maximizes its shock value. Camouflage creates the baseline of invisibility, while the flash of blue disrupts perception at its most critical moment, the instant before attack. Together, these layers create a defense system greater than either could achieve alone. As the day heats, the skink returns to its more ordinary routines. It basks on a warm rock, absorbing heat to fuel digestion and activity, then retreats into shrubs to forage. To a casual passerby, it may look clumsy, slow, even harmless. Yet beneath this ordinariness lies a sophisticated interplay of evolutionary design, a body tuned to vanish, a mouth armed with theater, and a survival strategy that has endured for millions of years. The system rule revealed here is simple but profound. Camouflage plus startle signaling buys the escape window. It is not brute strength or speed that keeps the blue-tongued skink alive, but the management of predator perception, the manipulation of attention, the exploitation of hesitation. In every hiss, every sudden flash of ultramarine is an evolutionary lesson. Sometimes the surest path to survival is not to fight or flee, but to confuse. Along the riverbanks of eastern Australia, the boundary between wild and urban blurs. In city parks, where joggers trace concrete paths and children feed ducks with crumbs of bread, another creature lingers quietly at the edges. Half in sunlight, half in shadow, the eastern water dragon, Intelagama lesurii, clings to rocks and logs, its posture deceptively casual. To the untrained eye, it is only another shape among rippled shade, a textured patchwork of grey, olive and brown. Yet this lizard, more than a meter in length when grown, is a master of disappearing not into distance, but into the nearest available exit. Its strategy is not simply to vanish where it sits, but to map every retreat in advance, so that survival becomes a choreography of stillness and sudden retreat. The dragon's appearance is a lesson in camouflage through imperfection. Its skin is banded, not in regular stripes, but in broken, uneven bands that echo the way light fragments across water. On riverstones, where reflections scatter into bright and dark ribbons, these markings confuse the eye, blending reptile into rock. A dark stripe cuts through the eye itself, breaking the symmetry of the head and disguising the unmistakable outline of a gaze. For predators, and for people who fail to notice until the creature bolts, the dragon's form dissolves until movement betrays it. Stillness is its first weapon. A basking water dragon may hold position for minutes at a time, chest pressed flat to stone, eyes half-lidded, dewlap inflated with warmth. To passers-by, it looks inert, almost lazy. Yet behind this apparent calm lies constant calculation. The dragon is never simply sitting. It is orienting itself toward the nearest escape route. A tree trunk with rough bark, a burrowed hollow between roots, or most often the dark safety of the river itself. Unlike many lizards that flee in panic, the water dragon prepares its retreat long before danger nears. It is not hiding in place. It is waiting at the threshold of escape. The moment of flight is rarely abrupt. When startled by distant movement, a dog's bark, a child's sprint, the dragon does not leap blindly. Instead, it begins a slow slide towards safety, body inching across the stone with such measured increments that each shift is masked by the shimmer of reflected light. Only when a threat crosses the invisible threshold of proximity does the stillness fracture. With a sudden burst of limbs, the dragon launches, claws scraping briefly before the body vanishes in a liquid dive. What follows is perhaps its most remarkable adaptation. Submerged, the water dragon holds its breath, nostrils lifted just to the surface, the rest of the body pressed into darkness. In this position, it can remain for up to 30 minutes, lungs storing air while metabolism slows. From above, only the faintest ripple betrays its presence. A predator scanning the bank sees nothing but empty water. For a lizard living in landscapes crowded with dogs, cats, birds, and snakes, this vanishing act is as close to invulnerability as evolution can grant. Yet camouflage here is not about invisibility alone. It is integrated with thermoregulation, the delicate balance of heat that governs reptile physiology. Water dragons bask openly on rocks to raise their body temperature, a necessity for digestion and activity. But basking is inherently risky. Exposure reveals them to predators. To solve this, they align themselves where sunlight and shadow interlace, adjusting posture so that parts of the body absorb warmth while others remain concealed. A dragon flattened on a river stone is not simply resting, it is fine-tuning its temperature while minimizing silhouette. Even the choice of basking site is strategic. Rocks close to the water's edge ensure that the line between heating and hiding is only a split second away. Urban environments have reshaped this calculus in surprising ways. In city parks, water dragons respond differently to humans depending on context. Where people are frequent but predictable, walking paths, sitting on benches, the lizards often allow close approach, treating humans almost as part of the background. But where dogs roam freely, their vigilance increases dramatically. The dragons flee earlier, diving at the first bark or bounding silhouette. Studies suggest that they use humans themselves as alarm networks, A sudden commotion, a shift in posture, even the reactions of ducks and pigeons nearby, all serve as early warnings that danger is approaching. In this sense, the water dragon demonstrates behavioral plasticity, integrating the presence of humans into its own survival system. The reliance on mapped exits reflects a broader ecological principle. For the water dragon, safety does not lie in invisibility alone, but in preparation. A lizard basking far from cover is a lizard doomed. By choosing perches that link concealment with retreat, it ensures that every exposure carries an escape clause. This is the system rule that governs its survival. Camouflage must always include an exit. Whether the retreat is a tree trunk, a hollow, or water, the illusion of safety is incomplete without the guarantee of escape. Their aquatic refuge also reveals their versatility as semi-aquatic lizards. Unlike many reptiles that avoid prolonged immersion, water dragons are capable swimmers, their tails laterally flattened to act as efficient rudders. Young dragons, in particular, make use of underwater hides, slipping beneath submerged branches or pressing against riverbeds until danger passes. This amphibious ability broadens their niche, allowing them to persist in landscapes where terrestrial cover alone would be insufficient. Ecologically, the eastern water dragon bridges multiple systems. On land, it consumes insects, fruits, and occasionally small vertebrates, controlling pest populations while dispersing seeds. In water, it influences aquatic invertebrates and provides prey for larger fish and birds of prey. Its survival strategies, then, are not merely personal. They underpin its role as both consumer and consumed in the web of riverbank life. The presence of water dragons in cities also creates one of Australia's more successful examples of coexistence. While many native reptiles vanish under the pressures of urbanization, these lizards have adapted with resilience. They bask on sandstone walls, nest in mulched gardens, and dive into ornamental ponds as readily as natural rivers. Their camouflage works as well against rippled shade in a city park as it does on a bushland stream. Their reliance on mapped exits translates seamlessly from hollow logs to concrete culverts. Survival here is not a reinvention, but a repurposing of ancient tactics for modern landscapes. Yet survival is never guaranteed. Introduced predators, particularly cats and foxes, pose constant threats. Hatchlings and juveniles are especially vulnerable, often falling to birds or even invasive miners. Still, the strategy of concealment plus retreat continues to pay dividends, for every dragon that survives to adulthood can persist for over a decade, holding territory across years of shifting seasons. From the perspective of the camera, the bankside vanish is a performance repeated endlessly, but rarely appreciated in full. The lens lingers on a dragon basking in the sun, its bands matching rippled light, its eye hidden in shadow. A jogger passes, a dog barks, and with one swift movement the lizard is gone, leaving only the faint turbulence of its dive. Moments later, as the surface calms, nothing remains to mark where it fled. The rock is bare, the bank empty, the dragon dissolved into water. In the eastern water dragon, we see camouflage elevated beyond coloration. It is strategy layered with foresight, behavior fused with geography. The dragon teaches a broader rule of survival. Concealment alone is fragile, but concealment tied to a mapped retreat becomes nearly unassailable. To vanish is one thing, to vanish with certainty is another. And so the riverbank holds its secret residence, basking between exposure and safety, living at the edge of water and land, adapting seamlessly to both. Their presence reminds us that the most effective camouflage is not about erasing the body from view, but about writing the escape into the landscape itself. In the shallows of tropical reefs, where light fractures into a shifting kaleidoscope of turquoise, gold, and emerald, survival seems to favor the muted and the hidden. Many fish here fade into sand, dissolve into coral, or shimmer silver to vanish in open water. Yet nestled among the stinging arms of sea anemones lives a creature that defies the logic of concealment. The clownfish, with its vivid orange body and stark white stripes edged in black, seems painted to be seen. To human eyes, this contrast is almost theatrical, a declaration of presence in a world where most species seek invisibility. And yet, paradoxically, this conspicuousness is part of a deeper camouflage, one bound not to background color, but to the chaos of its lethal home. The anemone is no gentle refuge. Its tentacles bristle with nematocysts, microscopic harpoons loaded with venom. For most fish, even a brush against these stingers means paralysis, then death. But the clownfish moves freely within them, weaving in and out with effortless precision. Its secret lies in a mucus coating layered across its scales, a biological armor that prevents nematocysts from firing. Unlike other fish, which trigger the stings upon contact, the clownfish glides untouched, immune within the very fortress that kills its enemies. This immunity is not innate from birth, but acquired, a process of acclimation where the fish carefully brushes against the anemone's tentacles in short increments until its mucus absorbs the chemical cues that signal self rather than intruder. The partnership begins with ritual and risk, and once formed, it becomes one of the reef's most enduring alliances. The clownfish's coloration, while striking to us, dissolves into coherence within the anemone's shifting tangle. Against the erratic backdrop of waving tentacles, pale tips, shaded stems, flashes of color intensified by light refraction, the fish's white bands echo tentacle highlights, while its orange blends into the anemone's base hues or coral surroundings. What appears to humans as a flag is, to a predator, just another fragment of chaos at the tentacle border. It is not invisibility through blending, but invisibility through distraction. The fish vanishes into noise rather than silence. Behavior sharpens this disguise. Clownfish rarely swim far from their host, and their movements are precise, darting bursts of motion followed by abrupt stillness, a rhythm that mirrors the sway of tentacles. Each park positions the fish in line with an anemone arm, so its outline fractures again and again into the living geometry of its host. To a passing predator scanning for clean shapes, the clownfish is never a body, never a target. It is a flicker in a mess of stings, a ghost tethered to a weaponized background. But the partnership goes beyond defense. It is mutualism, an exchange written in biology and behavior. The clownfish brings food particles into the anemone, its waste rich in nitrogen compounds that fertilize the host. In return, the anemone's tentacles provide a shield against predators. The fish also patrols its host, fanning water with its fins to improve oxygen flow and aggressively chasing away butterfly fish, which might otherwise nip at anemone tissue. Even at night, when the reef dims and many predators hunt, the clownfish remains vigilant, taking refuge deep within the tentacles, its presence a constant pulse of life in the anemone's body. The stakes are profound, for the clownfish has little alternative. Without its host, it becomes one of the reef's more vulnerable fish, slow, conspicuous, and easily consumed. Its evolutionary gamble has been to invest not in speed, not in armor, but in alliance. By tying its fate to the anemone, it has chosen specialization over generality, survival through partnership rather than independence. This makes each anemone a fortress, but also a trap. If the host is destroyed by bleaching, collection, or disturbance, the clownfish has nowhere else to turn. Its resilience is only as strong as the stability of its home. Predators face their own dilemma at this boundary. A Maury eel prowling through coral crevices might lunge at the flicker of orange, but its snout collides with stings. A reef fish approaching the tentacle edge senses chemical cues of danger and veers away. Even when predators recognize the clownfish, the cost of pursuit outweighs the reward. The anemone is more than cover, it is a living weapon, and the clownfish is both inhabitant and extension of that defense. From an ecological perspective, this partnership exemplifies how symbiosis can rewrite the rules of camouflage. The clownfish does not need to vanish into sand or coral, it only needs to vanish into the presence of a bodyguard. Its armor is not the absence of detection, but the presence of deterrence. Bright stripes become signals of occupation. This anemone is claimed, this weapon already in use. In this way, color, which usually attracts risk, becomes an emblem of safety. Even reproduction is woven into this alliance. Clownfish lay their eggs on flat surfaces near the base of their host, close enough that tentacles shield the clutch from most intruders. The male fans the eggs with his fins, keeping them aerated and free of fungus. Within days, larvae hatch and drift into the plankton, beginning a perilous journey in open water, before, if fortunate, settling back into another anemone. The cycle ensures that each new generation must pass again through the crucible of risk, finding a host, acclimating to its stings, and re-establishing the delicate chemical truce that allows the partnership to exist. From a broader lens, the clownfish-anemone relationship challenges our assumptions about survival strategies. It demonstrates that conspicuousness need not be fatal, that danger can be co-opted into protection, and that sometimes the surest path to safety is to tie one's fate to another organism entirely. The clownfish thrives not by escaping the weaponized space of the anemone, but by inhabiting it, turning risk into shelter. For viewers, this story resonates because it reframes our understanding of camouflage. We expect concealment to mean invisibility, the erasure of boundaries between animal and environment. But the clownfish reveals another path. Camouflage can also mean integration into a larger system, where survival is not about being unseen, but about becoming inseparable from something untouchable. Its stripes are not a betrayal of its presence. They are a declaration that it belongs within the chaos, a resident of a fortress that is both lethal and alive. And so, as the reef pulses with life, parrotfish grazing on coral, damselfish darting between branches, sharks circling the periphery, the clownfish remains in its place, hovering in and out of its host's embrace. It is never far, never fully exposed, always anchored to its living shield. To watch it is to glimpse a lesson written across the reef. Survival is not only a matter of fleeing predators or blending into rocks. Sometimes survival means becoming part of the weapon itself.